at all. Such simple wisdom, isn't it? If you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. Except sometimes we need to speak up. Sometimes people need to hear truth and love. And sometimes saying something that's not considered nice can actually be one of the kindest things that we do. We do have to realize, though, that in everything we say, everything we put out, there is a bias in our messaging. And I want to point that out to you because one of my core values is truth. And in saying that, I want to talk about some things that are going on in our current environment, in our current systems, that really have people emotionally charged. And in that search for truth, I started going back looking through my social media feed. I started going back through some of the emails that I subscribed to. And what I realized was, even though I agree with a lot of the things that come through my feed and a lot of the things that come through my email, I started looking at it from the perspective of truth. And I realized that there is a strong bias in everything. There's a bias in everything. And even the sources that I thought were the most neutral, they still have a bias. And so there really is a bias in every message. And the interesting thing about that, too, coming from a medical background as a nurse, in my training, we learned that the most unbiased way of confirming data is to have a double-blind randomized control trial. Okay, that's considered like the highest standard of collecting data that is unbiased. And if you can do a meta-analysis of that, that's just icing on the cake, right? But what we've discovered recently, within the last couple of years, is that even when you go back through those studies, when people have done those hallmark randomized, double-blind randomized controlled trials, that they found there's even bias in those on the part of the researchers. That when we have a certain outcome we want to achieve, even when we do the studies, we tend to have bias in the outcome. And so what does that mean for your business? All right. What does that mean for your business when we think that every message has a bias? Number one, recognize it. Recognize that everybody has a point of view, everybody has a bias, and we want to use that bias as a siren call. We want to use that bias to attract people to our businesses and that are going to know us, that they're going to like us, that they're going to want to hear our messaging, that we can serve, we can help them, right? So that actually to leverage our messaging. All right, had to pause. Want to be our community and learn and grow through what we have. Also, we want to use it to position our services and how they're different from our competitors. Okay, so using that bias helps us to position how our services are different from others. Now, here's where bias starts to go awry. Bias starts to go awry when we start attacking people. Okay, you can have a different opinion, you can have a different type of service, you can say this is why ours is different, but when you start attacking the person, when you start attacking the competitor, that's when bias starts to go awry. When we start slandering other people, that's when our bias is getting out of control. And the most dangerous form of allowing bias in is when we start to dehumanize a group of people. When we start using words like they and them for a people group that we don't agree with. Do you see that happening in our environment right now? Do you see people saying they, them, whether it's the left, the right, the government, the whatever, we're dehumanizing groups of people. And the danger in that is that when we dehumanize a group, we start to move into the emotional realm. And in the emotional realm, that's where we start to see the drivers of action. When we feel emotion about something, whether it's positive or negative emotion, it will drive our actions in either a positive or negative way. And an example of this is when you see mob mentality, right? You have a group of people who have come together, they're they like the same message, they're all on the same front together, and then those emotions get charged and charged and charged more and more and more, and then action starts to happen. And that's where you see the mob mentality of things that just get very out of control very quickly. And so is this necessarily a bad thing? No, when it's used in the right way. Some of the greatest changes that we've seen, not only in our own nation, but across the world, have happened because groups of people have come together in a united thought with a united bias, and they've taken positive action. But we also know that this same thing can lead to things like genocide, the Holocaust, those types of things. So, as with everything, your bias can lead to emotion and can be a driver of action, and that can be used either for positive or negative. So what I really wanted to drive home today was I want you to look for what is the bias in the messaging that you're receiving, what is the bias in the messaging that you're putting out there, and how is that bias driving emotion and driving subsequent action. Okay? And when you're looking for it, when you're thinking about it, then before you take that action, I can be thinking, is this what I want to be known for? Is this how I want to be seen by my peers? Is this how I want my reputation to be reflected? And when you take time, take that pause in that emotional state before you take action, then you can make the choice to take the most positive action possible. So I hope this was helpful for you. I hope that it was a little bit enlightening, opening all of our eyes, because I know it opened my eyes when I started digging into it this week. And I just want to encourage you that you get to use your bias for good. You get to use your bias to help people instead of to hurt people. All right? Have a great week. I'll see you soon.